Welcome to the New Growth Podcast with Nikki Walton. Join her as she explores divine love as a key to spiritual growth, empowered service, and inner and outer success. If you'd like to support Nikki's podcast, please visit BeHereNowNetwork.com/Nikki.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of New Growth. I am your host, Nikki Walton, and today I'm excited to launch a new series wherein I selfishly get to talk to the teachers, the gurus that I have thankfully stumbled upon during this journey that I've been on for the last, 20 years, it seems. With me today, virtually, I have John Stephenson. And before I tell you more about him and how I came across his beautiful teachings, I want to give you a backstory because I found him by way of another teacher named Joel Goldsmith. Now, I was probably 4 years deep into my constant reading and constant meditating. It was 2016. When I found Joel's books. The first one I found was The Art of Spiritual Healing. And then I read everything else. And I listened to everything that he had that's been posted to YouTube, all of the talks, thousands of hours of talks, any pamphlets I could find online in PDF form. I consumed it all. And I could feel the truth. I could feel the truth in everything, even though there were times where I thought, there's no way I can put this to practice, because a lot of what he's saying in the infinite way is to relax into presence and to let that presence become the fulfillment of whatever it is that you're supposed to do or who you're supposed to be in this life. That the truth, your true purpose, is living out from being this love, this divine presence. And although it felt true, I was still kind of going back and forth to other teachings that were more egoic, where I felt like I could have some control, some will over the direction that I wanted my life to go into. But I kept having this very strong pull into practicing. And then as life would have it, things got tough around me. And when that happens, you cling to the practice that works. And I clung to presence. And I was clinging to presence for, maybe 6 months. Doing only infinite way work very strictly, and everything began to change. Everything began to open up. And the fullness that I began experiencing, the word fullness started coming up in me when I would sit in presence. And in the beginning, when I would sit, I very much felt like it was Nikki aware of a presence. So there was duality there. Nikki aware of a click, an inner click of this love. And then during that period where I was clinging to this presence, trying to hold it and stay aware of it, it dawned that only the presence is, and that it's almost as if it's aware of itself. So the love, it's not that Nikki was aware of love, but that love was announcing itself where Nikki seemed to be, where Nikki appeared to be. And that word fullness kept coming up. So it wasn't just that presence or that love was in my body. It was everywhere. It was everywhere. And I started Googling fullness and Joel Goldsmith just to see if he had ever talked about it being so full, like so overwhelmingly beautiful. And a name came up, John Stephenson, and a title of a book called Fullness of Joy. And I thought, this is serendipitous. So I clicked through and I ordered a copy from Amazon. And I also got the digital download, of course, because I am all about instant gratification. And I immediately began reading before the actual paperback came. And I fell in love. I highlighted everything. Loved the paperback when I got it. Bunny-eared everything, and bought a second copy. And now both of those copies are actually gone, John. I've given them away as gifts. The second one I gave away to Rhonda Ross. I just had her on. She's Diana Ross's daughter. And I have a very limited amount of books I brought with me down here to Florida. Very small collection. And your book, of course, was in that collection. And I gave it away. Of all the books that I had, I'm like, this is the one that really brings the teaching, at least the practice that was most effective for me. you shared it so eloquently, and you really brought, I think, Joel's teachings like to fruition. Like you added to it in a necessary way. You made it even more clear. So with that, I want to welcome you to New Growth. Thank you so much for joining. I appreciate it deeply.
Oh, thank you, Nikki. It's such a pleasure to join you and that wonderful introduction. Yeah, so it is what I learned from Joel is that the spiritual way of life is very practical. It does meet your human needs as well as give you that kind of basis of foundation in oneness and love so that you feel fulfilled within yourself.
Yes, exactly. And tell me, you actually have met Joel. You grew up with his teachings. I'd love to hear what that was like, actually being raised in this understanding.
Well, I met him when I was a teenager. My mom began studying him. And so I'd gone to a few of his lectures when I was still in high school. And when I graduated from high school, I came to Hawaii. Number of reasons, but Joel was kind of at the top of the list. I mean, it was surfing maybe number one and Joel number two. But he was still living here, and it allowed me to go and have a lot of private or sessions with small groups and listen to him really at the end of his ministry. He was, because this was in 1963 and 64, and he passed away in 1964. So at the end of his ministry, he was really teaching mysticism. And the mystical way of life is the realization that everything is one, that everything, the substance of everything is spirit. And when you realize then that what you do within yourself and how you perceive others is in this context of oneness, it changes your perception, changes how you look at others and how you look at yourself, because you realize, oh, there's just one. So then when people are acting out negativity, you start having to then realize, well, where is this coming from and how do I put this in context to myself so that I can maintain harmony within myself.
So tell me, when you say everything is one, I have an idea of what it is for me here. How does that manifest for you where you are?
Well, it was kind of the opening of my consciousness that the I that I am is universal being, that it is not a personalized construct of mind and body, but it is actually a spiritual identity. And so it changed my perspective on looking at this world. And then it drew me not only into more of the mysticism of Joel, but it drew me into areas like quantum mechanics or with these people. Like, I just watched this wonderful film on David Bohm the other day, and his whole idea was this oneness, that there's an underlying oneness of all life. And that the constructs from the quantum to the classical, they've always been trying to marry them, and they couldn't without acknowledging that there is one basic substance of all life, and it's not a bunch of bits and pieces put together, but it is a whole.
Right.
And so that's kind of the what I started seeing is that, okay, whenever there were problems and challenges, rather than focusing on the particle, on the problem, if I started widening my context so that, I start taking in everything, pretty soon I go back to this idea of oneness. Well, if I'm aware of my spiritual identity, then I can become aware of the substance of all that I'm coming in contact with, whether it's people or environments or societies, doesn't matter. It all exists in this realm of oneness.
Yes. So this substance, this essence, how do you experience it? When I hear that, I think of Joel's teachings. I think of the experience that I have here. For me, it is like a listening ear. So during the day now, it's automatic. It's not really something that I have to do consciously. It's just always happening, where it's almost like I'm listening for a feeling or a vibration that is very natural to me, that is always there when I turn to it. And I call it love, but obviously it doesn't have a name. But for me, that's how it is. It's like I turn within and thoughts slow down and love is there. And when I open my human eyes, although I see the world, I'm feeling love. So I'm seeing forms and objects from love, from that feeling. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a wonderful description of it, because the feeling is of complete calm, complete stillness and silence. That's where you experience oneness. When your mind is really engaged in the outer, that is the conceptual. And you're always naming and labeling. You've been taught, we've been conditioned to see things as good and evil. But when you go into that stillness, you no longer are judging the world by its appearances, but you start experiencing the love, which is that's what it is. I've always thought that spirit, is an energy, there's an activity in spirit. It's the substance, but there's an energy, and that energy of spirit is love.
Yeah,
it's what makes everything work. Without love, nothing would work.
Exactly. No, that's beautiful. And that's been the experience here. And it's always nice to hear like that you're not crazy, that other people are having this too, which is why I too, in the mysticism, in that line, I went back and started studying like the teachers from the Christian tradition from like the 1600s, like Brother Lawrence or Saint Teresa, and to see the way they described this, the I am or consciousness or love, to hear the way they described it. It was very reaffirming, like reassuring.
Yeah, no, I think Saint Teresa, I did some research on her for another book I did. And what I loved was...
What book was that?
The Atua Man, my novel.
I have to finish that one. I started it, but I haven't finished.
Well, Saint Teresa kept describing ecstasy.
Yes.
She was in ecstasy when she was in this consciousness of the spirit. And her ecstasy became so great that she levitated. That's why, so many people are, she's kind of an icon, because there are those that say, oh yes, if you really get into this, you can transcend the material and totally be out of the material limitations. And that was her experience. But it so frightened the church that they put her in a convent.
Of course.
Anybody to see her.
Of course. I was lucky enough at the top of this year, like before lockdown happened, my sister and we went to her church and we got to see the home that she was born in and everything. It was beautiful.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
And
spontaneous. I don't know if it's, it's in Spain. I don't know if it's a villa or a villa, but my sister likes to book very like touristy type things. So she had told me that we were going to take a tour outside of Madrid, and I'm like, whatever. So I dragged myself on the bus at like 5 a.m. and they're speaking in Spanish about like the different stops on the trip. And I heard Saint Teresa. I'm like, what's happening? And she didn't know who she was. And so the whole trip, it was like an hour and a half outside of Madrid. I was reading, what's the book? It's the one where it's like Interior Castle. Is that her book? The Interior Castle? I think that's the one. I think that's it. I was reading that all the way. And when we arrived, It was great. And then I got lost in the city because I was trying to buy a rosary. It's a long story, but it was a powerful trip. And I'm happy that I went. I actually want to read a quote from one of your books, which is in alignment with what we're speaking about now. This is from Fullness of Joy. The spiritual world in all its fullness exists right here, right now. To be in that world, which is a state of bliss, is to be free from limitations of material cause and effect. Even though that kingdom is not of this world, you can be in the world, but not of it. You can be in the world, yet also be in my kingdom. It's all a matter of perspective. And I think I want to know from you, from that quote, what it's like being in this world, but not of it. How you are able to keep one foot, if not both feet, in the kingdom. How you remember.
Well, the practice of meditation, what it does is that it's kind of like if you're an athlete, the more you practice experiencing that stillness, that presence within, which is the love and the bliss, the more it becomes part of your nature, so that it's almost like muscle memory. You go through your life, and you said it in the beginning of our conversation, you're carrying this with you. You've done enough meditation and tuning into that so that it's so much a part of you that you can never get away from it, no matter what the world picture is. So being in the world is that we still participate in the world. We have human form. We're going through all the appearances of life, and we have to deal with all the stuff that's going on in the world, with the pandemics and the politics and the racial things, everything that's happening. We're not ignorant of that, but we look at it from the standpoint of love, of oneness. Oh, I can understand that, even if it's the nastiest, most mean person. Oh, they're not coming from where I would like them to come from, but I'm not going to condemn them because they're ignorant. I'm going to try and recognize that same Spirit of God that I know within me, that is the Spirit of love, is within all those people, whether they are expressing it or not. Therefore, I don't react so much. So I think the secret of being in the world is not reacting. I'm not really that much of a guru in the sense that my buttons do get pushed, but when they do, I'm aware of it, so that I can start saying, wait a minute, where are you going? Do you want to go down that road? Do you want to be angry? Do you want to get all upset? Or do you want to take a moment and stop and put this in a bigger perspective, and put it in a spiritual perspective? And as you practice being in the world, and as you practice, really that's non-judgment. That's what Jesus said, judge not. And forgiveness. So you forgive that judgment. And Jesus said, when Peter asked Jesus, how often do you forgive? 70 times 7, which is kind of a code for like forever, as long as it takes.
Right.
So that's kind of the activity of being in the world and not of it, is non-judgment, forgiveness, and recognizing and trying to maintain this center, not getting knocked off your spiritual center emotionally or physically, or by what's going on in the world.
Exactly. So if somebody listening at home sees a new scary COVID headline tomorrow, what would be your instructions for them to not react to that, especially if that's one of their triggers?
Well, if they're really fearful of disease, and then so they have to mentally reverse that which is causing the fear. Where's the power in disease? Oh, it's a virus. Well, what is this little virus? Is this virus harmful? Well, it appears to be in some people, and in other people, they seem to get this virus and go through it. Okay, so if you start taking the power out of the virus, realizing that everything that's made is spiritual. I mean, there isn't anything that exists outside of this grand creation. What makes it good or evil is our own judgments and our own reactions to it. So if we start withdrawing power, even from this virus that seems to be such a powerful instrument right now in the world, and can say, okay, I'm not denying that people are going to get affected by it, but the more I can see it as a product of this world, that when the presence of the divine is experienced, that is omnipresent. I mean, omnipotent. That is all powerful. It's also omnipresent, but it's all powerful. Mm-hmm. And in this whole message that we practice, there's a healing component to it. But the healing component says that your or my conscious realization of the presence of God, or the presence of the divine, or the presence of the infinite is a law of harmony, that there is no disharmony. There is no dis-ease. There is no conflict in this divine presence. So if we enter this divine presence, we're removing ourselves from conflict, from disease, from all of the negativity. And what that does to us is that it takes away the fear and it takes away the attachment. We're not attached to that through fear or whatever, mostly fear. And being not attached, then we can gain this perspective where we can allow ourselves to go completely into this divine spirit and experience that love, that presence. And in that love and that presence, there's a freedom. So if someone does that to themselves, for themselves, when they read a headline, then they're nullifying in their own mind the power of this virus. Now, does that do it for their neighbor who's suffering? Only if that neighbor joins in and comes along and says, okay, we can take away the power of all material effect. If individually we all start going in and bringing into our experience this activity of love, rather than going through the world fearful and defensive and ready to fight.
Exactly. So when you say, I want to know if fear can be there while you're also aware of this loving presence. Can they happen at the same time? Because at times for me, like you said, a button will be pressed, something will come up. I feel that gut reaction of fear. And that's almost for me now a trigger to reach for presence, to feel for presence, to be aware that presence already is. So then it feels like there's fear or anger or whatever it is and presence. Is that accurate, or am I just missing something?
I think when one becomes dominant, the other leaves.
Okay.
There might be a point when they both seem to be existent, but I think the more that you go into love, there is no fear.
You're right. I can see that too. And it takes, for me, depending on the thing that triggered it, it could be just moments where it seems like both is there, but then the love wins out and then mine comes back and it's like, but wait, we were worried about this or we were angry about this. And then that comes back and then I choose love, like you said, 70 times 7 or whatever, like from the Bible. That's how it is here over and over and over. And I think there was a quote that Joel shared once where he said that this presence is like a feeling of continual forgiveness, of yourself and others, or of yourself for thinking that these things, these appearances are real.
Yeah. No, I think we do live in a state of forgiveness, forgiving ourselves and forgiving those that seem to be acting out, because the whole kind of construct in the Eastern world, they called this world all Maya, illusion. Yes. Even the quantum physicists are basically they're saying that the physical existence that we say is real is not, because there's more space between the molecules and there is solid, but we mentally fill in all the blanks and make a solid world out of something that is really very ethereal. So as we start not naming and labeling and not judging, not reacting to the constructs of this world, then we start seeing this world have less influence. It becomes more ethereal. It doesn't have this solid weight of like, this is it and this is what's going to happen. It can all be changed.
Right.
And that was the battle between the classical physicists and the quantum mechanics. It says, well, if you light a flame under a rocket, it's going to go up in the air. And it says, yes, that happens on that level. But there's another level too, that you don't know about, that could change the whole dynamics of material cause and effect. Exactly. And that really becomes the basis of spiritual healing, is that that dynamics of material cause and effect have been altered by this other realm, this other level of existence that an individual taps into. And when they tap into it, they bring that level of existence, that spiritual level, into reality, into manifestation.
That's beautiful. And I remember the first time I truly understood that was in an email from you. When I had sent you an email maybe a couple of months after finding your book. This would have been in 2018, worried about something. And your email response was so short and so powerful that I have it saved in my screenshots here. I'm going to read it to you guys. And I actually send it to everyone that I work with for my coaching, any family members that are going through stuff that I can tell they're open to this. There was actually 2 emails that I saved from you, and they're at the top of my important list of screenshots. Here's the first. It says, "Yes, Nikki, the appearances don't matter. They are the temptations to give power to something outside of the one presence." I can't tell you how many times I've reread that sentence or read it to someone on the phone that was struggling with something. You go on and you say, "But you have to be completely detached from the appearance to know it is ineffectual." So the acknowledgement of the presence always goes hand in hand with the withdrawing power from the realm of effect. When you experience the peace that the presence brings, you are in a state of oneness and no outside power can affect that. But if you believe an appearance has power and you carry that belief into meditation, you may experience a peace without affecting the appearance. To the degree that you can nullify the belief about an appearance before you meditate, you will deepen your awareness of the presence. And for me, that blossomed into even the idea of Nikki sitting down to meditate is an appearance, that this presence, this love is already there. And so I remember sitting down one day to try to meditate and try to let go of the appearance. And I'm like, even Nikki is an appearance. This love stands. The love is always here, always already here. And it looks like there's a Nikki turning to it. And thank you. Thank you for that email.
Yes. You're welcome. I'm so happy that you caught it. That's wonderful.
Yeah, truly beautiful and appreciated. And I've passed it along to so many people that I'm sure appreciate it. And some of them will be listening to this. And sorry if somebody emails you too. I apologize in advance.
Well, that's all right. No, we're here to basically, in our way, live in this consciousness so that this of love and of peace, so that it prevails. And there are people all over the world doing this. I mean, it's everywhere. Because the Infinite Way or Goldsmith's writing has no organization, and it's not a church or anything like that. Nobody really knows how many or who are practicing this. But from indications of, like you said, you go onto the YouTube and listen to Goldsmith tapes from around the world. People are doing this all over in Asia, Africa, Europe, here, South America. It's really universal, Australia. I mean, everywhere.
And a lot of these big teachers that are out now that are popular, some of your favorite teachers, y'all, they have cited Joel as being very instrumental in their journey into their understanding of what reality is and what it isn't. And those teachers, at least the ones that have gone public, are Eckhart Tolle and Michael Beckwith and Ayanla, and Wayne Dyer said he wrote his books with a picture of Joel looking at him. So, a lot of the teachings that we have today came from Joel, through other people.
That's so true. Joel kind of broke the mold. That people that are interested in the history of Joel, we have a video biography of Joel. It can be ordered. It's either streaming or I can send a DVD. It can be ordered through Aloha Mystics, or, just Google Joel Goldsmith documentary, and there's a preview of it on our YouTube page. And but that's for people that want to know the background, where a lot of these teachers, where Joel came from. It gives context, so that when you study his books or you listen to his recordings, it gives you an idea of how the spirit works, because it's not like special people. It's just anybody that catches this vision and is humble enough to say, "Hey, wow, this is great." Then it will take them on a fabulous journey.
Exactly. Yes. And it cushions you along that journey too, which I found personally and thankfully, as you're going from one reality to the next, it cushions you along the way.
Yes. Yeah. No, it's not it's It's radical in one sense. From the materialist point of view, it's like, oh, this can't exist. But yet when you get into it, it's not going to rip everything away until you're ready to make that big transition. I mean, there have been people that their lives have been turned upside down because they've gotten into this. But if you're really sincere and you're ready for this, it's not going to turn you, it's not going to be so traumatic that you're going to say, why did I ever pick up that book?
Exactly.
You know?
Exactly. No, it's beautiful. I also saw, like, in the last month or two, I started really reading the Upanishads heavily. And I can see where I know Joel had mentioned like the Vedas, and he talked about some of the teachers that influenced him long before. And I think he was even aware of like Nisargadatta Maharaj. So to read, like you said, Maya, to know that if it didn't exist in the beginning and it's not going to exist in the end, that it also doesn't exist in the middle, to see that written, from all of these centuries ago, and then to read Joel's words, it's comforting to know that, because as I became aware of that fullness that stands apart from the body, from the world, and started viewing the world from that. This presence is the reality and the world is an appearance on it. To see others try to express that through words is very comforting.
Yeah. No, I think when you are on this kind of mystical path, it does draw you into looking at all the other ways people have expressed this, from the quantum physicists to the Eastern traditions. I think that Joel had said that Shankara, the Vedas of India, Shankara was basically, his infinite way is a modern day presentation of what Shankara was
Absolutely.
doing.
I was reading Shankara this morning. That is amazing and true. Absolutely true.
And that's and Deepak Chopra, that's what he's basically, that's his whole thing was, it's very simpatico with what Joel's teaching is, because it recognizes that there is this underlying oneness that unites all life.
Yes. They always tell you like the teacher doesn't appear until you're ready. And I had read, you said Deepak's name earlier. I had read one of his books, I don't know, in 2013. And it was a great book. And I hadn't opened it again until recently in the Kindle. And, on your Kindle app, if you guys have one, it'll say, do you want to start on the page you left off on? And it was a page I left off on in like 2013, 2014. So I'm like, sure, let's see. And that page that I left off on was about the Yoga Vasishtha, which he said is the only book, this is Deepak, the only book he keeps on his nightstand, at least when he wrote that book, is the Yoga Vasishtha. And it's powerful. And I was actually presently reading it. I had only found it like maybe May of this year. And I've posted it like on Instagram a million times, because it feels like a culmination of everything that I've experienced, everything I've read. And it's so pure and so clean. And it's exactly in alignment with your teachings, with Joel's teachings. And to see Deepak confirm that too, like, this is the only book. He said, whenever I get caught up and I think this world is real, I just open up that book and read a couple of passages. And you only need to read a little bit, even of your book. Like when I go back into it, I just need like a paragraph, and it just, presence is there, and I'm able to live out from that for the rest of the day.
Right. Well, because this is really a way of life, and all the books and all the lectures, all that are just to basically stimulate you, or to help you when you're having a problem and can't see something, or to stimulate you so that your own inner expression of this one presence can flow, because it's going to flow individually through everybody. Yes. It's not all the same. I mean, you see that in nature. There isn't, any two snowflakes alike, so this whole world is, but yet they're all one. It's all the same substance.
Right. So this is for me, and I'll say that in the beginning, it felt very effective and powerful to go through the day looking at objects and saying, oh, that's just a form of love. That's a form of God. That's a form of love. But it still felt very cerebral, and it didn't feel completely true. And so when I made that transition just before reading your book, and then it really started to lock in after reading your book and after messaging you and talking with you, it became not so much a cerebral, like that's love and that object is love and that's a form of love too. Only love is here. So that tree can't be here, even though it seems to be. Only love is here. And that's how I deal with scary headlines or any situations that come up throughout the day. I remind myself first, I feel that presence, and I know only God is here. And if God is here, God is there, wherever that problem seems to be, which means the problem isn't there. And then it'll seem like Nikki has to do stuff sometimes, to resolve things. Other times things get resolved on their own. But it seemed to be a shift from me reminding myself that that's a form of God to only God is here. And that form isn't. That form isn't there.
Right. Well, that's taking it deeper into the oneness, because what really creates the form is our concept of it, what we've been conditioned to see. And so when you start you start seeing that invisible behind the form, rather than basically, there's a very fine line between pantheism and mystical oneness.
Yes.
Yes, God is in everything, but no, there isn't a piece of God in a tree, or there isn't a piece of God in a rock. The rock and God are inseparable. The person and God is inseparable. So it's kind of it's a different, it's more inclusive in a way. And it brings it all back to, it's the specific and the universal at the same time.
I love that. And that's necessary.
Yeah. Otherwise, we don't lose our identity because we live out from oneness.
Right.
Even though we're all one, we all still have our talents, our loves. Everybody likes different kinds of food or different things. And so we all get to express that. There's not any kind of a sense that we all have to be the same. Mm-hmm. That would be horrible. It's just this celebration of our differences in the oneness. That yes, we can. What a boring world it would be if everybody was the same.
It was the same, right? And wanted all the same things. Also that. So, tell me about desires and wants, where they come from, and how we deal with them using Infinite Way teachings.
Well, Joel said that there's really only one legitimate desire, and that is to know the truth. Mm. But now that is like such a big, broad statement, because what is the truth and what is it to know? And I think we all come into this world with talents and things that we want to express, whether we're mathematical whizzes or business people or artists or performers or whatever it is. And that desire to express those talents is really a spiritual impulse. Because if you take it out of the personal, one of the big secrets is, do you personalize everything, or do you realize that this is an activity of God that's flowing through me, and I'm just grateful that I can be the instrument and let this out?
I like
when
that.
When you start to personalize it, then you're starting to cut everything off and say, "Oh, this is me and mine." There's so many kind of paradoxes. Like in spiritual teachings and mysticism, there's only one I, or ego, but that same I, that's spiritual, if it's highly personalized, can become a complete narcissist and buffoon. Mm-hmm. So it's not that the ego is bad. It's that when the ego is limited by personal concepts, then it becomes a part of this judgmental world. It's either a good ego or a bad ego. And really, that's what we are all constantly trying to see through and eliminate through our study and our practice. So the desire, when desire is to fulfill that personal sense of I, then it can become destructive, because it can be like, oh, you're in my way, I'm going to push you out, I need to do this. And so you get walked over, or you walk over people. And spiritually, that's completely the antithesis of the desire that is expressing itself as whatever your talent, what your love, all of this that comes through you. Then that is an act of God. That's an act of spirit. And everybody has talents to use.
Yes. So if it is let's say it's a right desire, or what you feel in your heart is a right desire. How do you let it in? Because I know Joel says it comes from within. You open up a way out. What does that look like for you there?
Well, being, an artist and creative person, it's always, okay, I have an idea. How do I express it? Whether it's a story or book, or whether it's a painting or a ceramic piece. And then I just kind of let the whole thing unfold. I do the work. I mean, like an artist, you have to have your craft. You have to know how to do what it is so that you can express what you want to express. And you go through those steps, and then as it starts to unfold, you realize, oh, this is something's taking over this. I'm not really doing this now. I'm not, my ego isn't in here. And you start losing the fear of, is this going to be successful or not? Mm-hmm. And you kind of have a detachment. Okay, I really feel I need to express this, so I'm going to express it and let it out and see if it finds a home somewhere, or see if it defines.
So not worried about the outcome. You're just in that moment.
And so then you're not, there's no outcome. Basically, then it's the joy of expressing something.
Yes.
And the end product of that is out in the world, and people pick it up or they don't pick it up. But that's not your concern. I mean, you're concerned about it in a way, but I mean, that's not your total focus. It's on expressing something.
When you're in that flow, when you're creating art like that, are you consciously aware of that presence in those moments? I know when I'm writing, those are times where it feels like there's just writing and there's not the practice of turning to or feeling or being aware of the presence as consciously as I am when I'm doing like mindless things like, washing dishes or walking around the house. It's easy to tap into presence, but it seems as if it's almost, I don't want to say eclipsed, but the writing is very much in the foreground for me when I'm doing that.
Well, I think there's two aspects to it. There's what you have an idea of what you want to say and how you're saying it. So you're putting it out there. But then in the writing, I'll find, I've got an outline. I'm trying to fill this in and I'm going this way. And all of a sudden a sentence will come and I think, wow, where did that come from?
Yeah.
that knows that says that you're open to this creative principle. And I think that all artists experience that.
Yes.
They do something and they have an idea, but if they're too rigid and confined in their concept, then they don't let that creativity break the barriers to get outside the box, so to speak. But absolutely. As long as you're approaching it and you have this openness, you put your craft together, you know what you want to say and you want to say it in the best way you can. But then there are these little gems, these little things that come and you just know, that's not me. That didn't come out of my conditioned sense. I could have never thought of that.
Right. Not out of my little brain.
That came out of this universal consciousness.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you, you said like not really holding to rigorous, it just made me think, like, I hear about people that say they need to set aside a certain time. Like, I'm going to sit down and I'm going to write for 30 minutes or 45 minutes. Is that how you write, or do you just let it flow over a period of time?
Oh, I have to kind of discipline myself because I sit and I write stuff and it's not any good. And I think, what am I doing? I should go do something else. But there's a certain discipline that's necessary.
Yeah.
But I'm not terribly rigid, like, I've got to write 5 pages a day or something like that. If I'm on a project, because sometimes it just doesn't work. And if it's not working, then I can go, if I have other things that I need to do, I can go do these other things.
Exactly.
So, I think there's a balance between discipline and being too obsessive over something.
Excellent. Well, we are almost out of time, but I want to hear a bit more about your latest book. And I want folks to know how they can find you, where they can purchase the books, and just any words of wisdom that you'd like to share to help people get through these uncertain times right now.
Well, the book that you mentioned, The Fullness of Joy, is kind of like a spiritual textbook. It's kind of a manual for finding that paradise within. How I hate to use the term self-help because I'm not into that.
Yeah, me too.
But it is.
You synthesized the literature. Like, I think it was a really good summary and a really good how-to. It was very practical.
And then my latest book, The Atua Man, is a novel. It's an adventure novel about a mystic who is breaking the bounds of material sense, but has a lot of people that want to stop him and discredit him. So it's much more of I thought that in fiction with fictional characters, I could really push the envelope and make it dramatic. And hopefully there's a lot of spiritual principles in it, but it's an adventure that's, pushes the boundaries of what we think of as reality.
Are any of the stories in this fiction based on true characters or anything from your own life? I know that inspiration comes from somewhere.
Oh, every writer, uses their own experiences. And then there's a major adventure in the book, a sailing trip into the South Pacific and into the world of the Polynesians that I experienced when I was younger. Yeah. But it's all fiction.
Okay.
Other than the places and,
Gotcha.
the context, which it's in.
I'm going to read it. Right when you published it, I was on a kick of, I'm not reading new things. I'm trying not to read. I'm trying to just practice, because I saw how I'd stopped doing everything else. I don't watch television. I don't really have any other hobbies. It's all just presence. But reading became that new distraction because it's easier to read than it is to marinate in love. So I do want to read it. And I think I'll just take it slow and read a little bit every day, like the way I would watch a Netflix show.
Exactly. No, it's entertainment, but it's entertainment with a more spiritual basis than a lot of adventure books. It's not, it can be escapist reading, but there's a little core of truth going through it.
That's the only kind of fiction I would read. That's exciting. That's good. I watched a show recently on Netflix called Messiah. And somebody recommended, they were like, I know you don't watch stuff, but you should totally watch this. If you haven't seen The Messiah on Netflix, you should absolutely watch it. It was great.
Oh, really? I kind of remember that. And for somebody, it's like a modern day Jesus, right?
Yeah. But it was a nod to these teachings. Even in the background of one of the scenes, there was a very small corner you could see of an Eckhart Tolle book. So even though the average viewer would think that he was the return of Christ, he continuously made the point to say that God is talking through all of us, to all of us, that, the Christ never left, that presence is here now and always will be. And when you're aware of it, history has ended. There were such powerful quotes throughout that I had to go and Google the director, the writer, just to see who is this person? Because they're in the know.
Oh, that's terrific. Oh, thanks for that tip. We will watch it.
It was, I've watched it twice and I've caught a couple of things that I didn't catch the first time. Very powerful. And it actually was not renewed, even though it was viewed in 33 million households. So they're very sad, and I am too. But I think, everything has a silver lining. It's probably good because the way it ends, there's a question there. So I'm okay with it not continuing. It was powerful in and of itself, that first season.
Oh, well, that's terrific. We'll take a look at it.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
Well, it's been amazing speaking with you, John. Tell us your website and any other things that you would like for us to support.
Well, you can find about our work at AlohaMystics.com. It has different pages for me, for my wife, Sandra, who's a life coach, a creative coach, and my mother, Virginia, who is 101 and was one of Joel's original teachers.
Wow, she's 101?
Yes.
That is amazing. What a blessing.
Yeah, well,
that is beautiful.
She's still bright and hanging in here. She's waiting for her new adventure.
I love that. Does she live in Hawaii with you guys?
Yeah, she lives in a senior's place, where she can get her meals and that kind of stuff.
Excellent. That is beautiful. I love that. I'm so happy you shared that. Thank you.
Yeah. So the website is alohamystics.com.
Alohamystics.com.
Think of Hawaii, aloha, and mystics.
Excellent. Thank you so much, John. And thank you all for tuning in again. We'll be back very soon. Please like and subscribe and leave comments on iTunes for me. I love you, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye.